And then I'm roughly on the Unit 1 slides, slide 89-ish. So this is Computer Programming A, lecture around style and more specifically comments. If you haven't done so already, on CodePen, whatever editor you have, let's see, I'll pull up a project, this one. You can change the view to make it look more like GameLab. You may prefer this view over here. Maybe you like your picture on the right. Maybe you like your picture on the left. And you can also default, I think it's at the bottom. So make it like GameLab, I put my picture on the right. So this code draws like the penguin's face. Right now, I've organized it. It runs and it produces some things, but it's kind of hard to read. I see some colored words and then the numbers are a different color, but I don't really know what's going on. This is an example of bad style or bad readability for some code. Go back to the slides. So why do you want good style? Computer program, I'm quoting one of my college professors. He said that a program has three audiences. The computer, or the compiler that does the thing and runs and produces the output. There's also the programmer, right now that's you, who creates it. And then number three, other programmers that must read, evaluate, and or maintain it. And so right now that's me, that's your friends and families that want to make sense of it. And later on, if you decide to do more comprehensive projects, it's your coding team, your fellow software engineers or developers. And then he says a whole bunch of other things, but having good style increases the long-term usability of your program. Maybe a month from now, you go back to your programs and you look at it, you're like, oh, what the heck what was I doing? I know it produces a penguin, but what went into that? Comments and having good style is one way to organize those thoughts. So as we move to more text-based coding, you're noticing it's not as easy as dragging and moving blocks. Instead, there are curly braces. And another important idea is indentation, spaces and tabs. In CodePen, it has some nice features. For example, like if you mouse over, well, I think I disabled it. So let me see. So for example, like if you mouse over one of these squiggly brackets, it should tell you and highlight in a little box where it's matching squiggly brackets. Sometimes it also does auto indentation for you when you have sections of code that are related to one another. It gives you an indentation after you press enter. So it's trying to help you have good style, to organize your code into logical chunks. Okay, so that's these parts. And you can add as much indentation and as many new lines in JavaScript as you want, as long as it doesn't interfere like this, for example. Now that doesn't make any sense for the computer. Does it? Yes, it does. Okay, JavaScript is a little weird. So this is bad style. If you break up your background function, you got 130, 130, and then another 130 down here. It's hard to follow. You try to have one line of code per line, and then we'll try to fix this after a bit more talking to. Okay, so as we're coding right now, whether you're a beginner, whether you've done some coding, you are coding for like you in the future. Think at the end of this class, maybe you go on to college or you take another computer programming course, computer science course here, and you want to do some review. You take a look at your program and you want to help yourself in the future, which means you should label and organize your code so that you can remember quickly instead of having to dig through the logic and all that struggle you had to do now to like produce this squiggly line to make a particular like snake. Or maybe later on when we see like more complicated functions, the logic that went there is hard to follow without some English and regular language that makes sense to us instead of the computer. So one way to do that is with comments, and I did highlight that in the GameLab. They look like this, two lines. In CodePen, it changes colors. This code runs once, and then down here, so my canvas has a width, oops, I can't spell, width of 300 and height of 300. I'm trying to help me in the future. Background, the background color is grayish. And then down here is the messy stuff. Okay, well, I know there's a fill, I know there's ellipse. I'm fixing this ugly block of code, this badly stylized section of code, and just to start, I'm having each one on a new line. And I notice there's some circles, there's some eyes and a beak, and I'm like wondering, how do I figure out from these lines of code what creates what? One way to do that is utilizing this comment. Because it is ignored by the computer, you can temporarily remove lines of code and try to isolate your problem. Like right here, we know that this one creates one ellipse, and then below afterwards creates another ellipse. Fill, nothing, ellipse. So I'm adding in lines of code one by one. So right about here. And then afterwards, I believe this is the yellow beak, yes? Yep. So I would add a comment down here, yellow beak. And maybe up here, it's the pairs of eyes, including the eyeball. Just to make better sense of that code. This is the black part of the eye. Maybe up here it's the white part of the eye. I'm trying to break down those lines of these segments of code, and later on when we make our own functions, this skill comes in handy again. One big part of computer science is how can you break down the problem into smaller chunks and then piece those together to create something really cool, like your Pokemon, Magikarp, like your farm animal, your pig, or your panda bear. And here's another example. For example, the double slashes makes one line go away. If you wanted to comment out a lot of lines, you can do /* or the asterisk, and then below it */, and that is a multi-line comment. Useful. And yeah, there's shortcuts. If you wanted to comment multiple lines at once, you could highlight, for example, the white part of the eye. On Macs, you press Command / and then it does multi-line comment for you. And if you press it again, it will uncomment. Computer doesn't see it. Computer does see it. So that's really neat. Using comments to temporarily remove code can help you isolate the problem. And that's pretty much all I got to say. This is on styles and commenting and how it's useful for us as beginning programmers.